The Marlins have added 3 prospects to the 40-man roster ahead of the Rule 5 draft, and I believe they made the right choices.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Marlins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. I'm a diehard Marlins fan, and I've podcasted about the team for the last 4 seasons. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And on today's show, Alex, Forever Marlins, over on Twitter, is joining me to break down the decisions the Marlins made. They protected 3 prospects ahead of the Rule 5 draft. This deadline was interesting because, the Marlins had some decisions they had to make. There were a lot of prospects in the Marlins system that we're kind of on the limbo phase. Like, do we add them to the 40-man roster, or do we risk leaving them unprotected? And maybe another team swoops in and grabs them. We'll find out later on this year. But the 3 players they decided on, 2 of them I think were no-brainers. Joe Mack, we had William Kempner, and Josh White. Josh White and Joe Mack were locks. William Kempner, I think, is a very good relief pitcher who the Marlins want to keep in their system. So we're going to talk about these players, the decisions they made to keep these guys, and why I think Alex and I both agree they made the right ones. So Alex, your initial thoughts after seeing the transactions?
I mean, yeah, I'm first of all just very glad that they didn't do some absolutely insane move like not adding Joe back to the 40-man. But there was like 1% of me that just kind of thought that was going to happen. I was just preparing for like my all-time crash out. But no, I'm pretty thrilled to see what they actually did here in terms of the additions. William Kempner, I think, is pretty slept on, generally speaking, but the dude is absolutely disgusting. And he is a dude that can stretch for like multi-inning relief. And like, honestly, these days, being able to get that kind of usage out of a reliever is becoming more and more rare. So having a guy like that in your back pocket is great. Obviously, Josh White has been like the standout relief pitcher for AAA the entirety of the 2025 season. And I just don't think I need to say anything about Joe Mack. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, Mack is incredible. I think he's the franchise catcher of the future. It's just a matter of time until he proves that. I know there's always that question when you come up from AAA to the major leagues, that adjustment period, especially offensively, but defensively, he's so good and his game's going to translate to the next level. It was the obvious decision. If you could pick one player in the Marlins system that was Rule 5 eligible to protect, it would have been Joe Mack, no questions asked. Now, the roster is currently at 40 with the addition of these 3 prospects. They DFA'd Joey Wiemer to make room for these transactions. More about that later in the show. But you mentioned William Kempner, and I wanted to mention these relief pitchers because the Marlins bullpen, it's been a subject of not criticism, but people say, hey, they got to add to the bullpen if they want to compete. And I agree with that. However, if you can add to the bullpen internally rather than spending a ton of money on aging veterans like Rafael Iglesias or Ryan Helsley, then I think you're in a really good position, because everything about Kempner and Josh White tells me that they're going to be able to get outs at the major league level. Now with Kempner, a lot has to do with his control. He started to get a little bit wild when he got promoted to AAA, but overall, just a great season. Opponents hit under 200 against him. He had a 33% strikeout rate. And again, this is almost 70 innings pitched. And then Josh White, I thought Josh White should have been called up at the end of August, to be honest with you. I thought he was that dominant and really had nothing left to prove. So they're on the 40-man. They're going to be in spring training. There's a realistic world in which both of these guys break camp with the Marlins, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I think that the openings are there right now in the bullpen. And there are guys who are more established in the bullpen currently on the active roster that are, I mean, question marks kind of, and so there is a possibility that they have to earn their job back in spring training. And frankly, I think you hit the nail on the head. Josh White and William Kempner they have nothing left to prove in the minor leagues. The only thing left to see now is if their stuff plays in the majors. And I mean, I have obviously the same concern you have about bringing any minor league pitcher up to the majors, which is that they could be just absolutely dominant in AAA, and then just not be able to compete with major league bats. So, and that could happen. We don't know. I think spring training is going to be very illuminating for that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that these guys, if they didn't make camp right out of spring training, I'd be surprised, especially Josh White.
Yeah, no, especially Josh White for me as well. Kempner, maybe they want to give him a little bit more time. I think he only had 13 games in AAA, but relief pitching is different than starters. For a starter, like say Robbie Snelling, you want Snelling to get as many reps as possible and almost wear out his welcome in AAA. With relievers, stuff plays, and you could make that jump from AA to the majors. And if you have the stuff for it, it could be a seamless transition. That was a really good point you made with, just waiting and seeing whether they're going to be able to get these outs, because it takes me back to last spring training. I remember tweeting about this guy who's a left-handed pitching prospect on the Marlins. He had a 13.75 K per nine. The guy's name was Josh Simpson, and I was super, super high on Josh Simpson in spring training. I was actually going through my old tweets and I found the video of him like striking out Yordan Alvarez in a Grapefruit League game. I'm like, look out for Simpson, guys. But ultimately, we all know how that happened. And Simpson and Michael Peterson, I want to mention, are still on the 40-man roster. I think that's an interesting decision because, to me, I don't see how you can roll out a 2026 opening day roster with Michael Peterson and Simpson. I don't think they're above average major leaguers. I don't think they're average major leaguers. So I know this is getting a little bit off topic, but on the topic of the bullpen, do you see a scenario in which Simpson and Peterson are still on this roster? Like, they haven't been DFA'd yet, and it's mid-November.
So the Josh Simpson thing is pissing me off because I had a source reach out to me anonymously telling me that they were insiders of the Marlins, had the creds to prove it, and said that Josh Simpson was shortlisted for DFA coming soon. Now, I don't know why any sources are coming to me for anything, to be honest with you. And so I was as surprised as anybody was. But I read that email and I was like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Now,
Right.
I was going to write this article this week about the Josh Simpson potential upside and like what it is that is making Bendix keep him here. And I decided to hold off until we actually saw what was going to happen. But I mean, you look at it and you weren't crazy a year ago for thinking that there was something there. I mean, his stuff, he was never like an incredible pitcher in the minor leagues or anything, but he always had that upside. He had some of his stuff played really well. He had good swing and miss. He could induce weak contact. This was a guy who you could see fulfilling a role in the bullpen. And if he doesn't get DFA'd before spring training next year, it's obviously because Bendix knows something that we don't. So,
Right.
And that's a thing about as far as the eye test is going to take us at this point in time, because yes, there was some actual like notable observable upside in his last few appearances of the season. He got some strikeouts against some like impressive batters, and maybe that was the start of something. If he makes spring training and breaks camp, I really hope that was the start of something.
Yeah.
If you were asking me to make like a rational call as to whether or not Josh Simpson has the possibility of being on an active roster come 2026, I'm going to tell you no. But given everything that we've seen thus far and the momentum of how this has gone thus far, anyone's game. And I'll break from you on Michael Peterson a little bit. I do actually think that he has like the underlying metrics to suggest that he could be a viable major league relief pitcher. And he had some pretty good outings for the Marlins, especially that series against the Rangers towards the end of the season. I was there at those games watching that, and like he was looking good out there, So I think that he's got something. I could see him be he wouldn't be like my starting active roster guy, but he's a guy that I would have in AAA and be ready to pop up on injury or something. He seems like a guy who could pull up more reliably than a George Soriano or a Josh Simpson in my observation.
I mean, he throws really, really hard. So
He does.
anytime you have that velocity, that's a plus. I guess, I don't know. I would rather have Peterson on the roster than Soriano. I think we both agreed on that.
That's
it was
just not
just
even
time.
a question.
Like, I don't think there's
good luck
one
to the
pitcher.
Orioles.
Yeah. It's so funny because they DFA'd him and he was immediately claimed. I'm like, do you know any? You don't know George Soriano.
Not like we do.
No. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the casualty of this Rule 5 protection period. Joey Wiemer was DFA'd. He's off the 40-man roster, and we're going to talk about why the Marlins decided to go that route. That's coming up right after this. Guys, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game, maybe you're driving home from the gym or a radio show or from work, and you want to ride the hot hand, you see a bet you like, FanDuel's got you covered because they have live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks, and you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And it's not just basketball, of course. They have all sports. NFL is in full swing. College football, the newest college football playoff rankings just dropped. I know a lot of you are Canes fans. So if you think the Canes are going to finish out, maybe you look at their schedule. Maybe they're going to go to the playoff. You could place bets on anything over at FanDuel. And if you win your first $5 bet, new customers will get $300. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, play your game, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here with Alex, Forever Marlins. We're talking about the Rule 5 protected players, the transactions that were made, and also a DFA'd player, Joey Wiemer, is off the Marlins 40-man roster. First off, thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Joey Wiemer, though, I'm confused by this situation, Alex. I really am, because to me it feels like the complete opposite of a traditional Bendix move. Okay, so when Bendix usually brings in a player on the margins, a waiver claim or a low-level trade, there's a reason he does so, and you usually see the reason for that pretty quickly. And so last summer, Joey Wiemer gets claimed off of waivers by the Kansas City Royals, quickly makes his debut with the Fish after tearing it up in AAA. I mean, he was going off with the Jumbo Shrimp, and there were a lot of underlying metrics that you understood why the Marlins were willing to take a flyer on him. Now, it wasn't all good when he made his debut. A ton of swing and miss. He struck out all the time. But the exit velocity, the bat speed, the power, the raw power you saw, and the hair, it reminded me a lot of Kyle Stowers pre-2025. However, he's been DFA'd. The Marlins say, you know what? We feel like our outfield's in a good position without him, and presumably he's not going to get a shot to make the roster, in 2026 unless something drastic happens. So your initial thoughts, Alex, on what transpired there?
Yeah, it's definitely a little surprising. Joey Wiemer, I mean, I would say by no stretch of the imagination was a bad player. I mean, he was not, despite the appearance, any way, shape, or form going to be a suitable replacement for Stowers out there in the outfield. But, he hit 3 home runs. I think he only played like 25 games or something. So that's not bad. He had good slug somewhere in like the low mid 400s, if I'm not mistaken. For me, I think the most surprising part about that was that, yes, the Marlins outfield is stacked right now, right? Theoretically, between Marcy, Stowers, and Conine, and then having a platoon option with Eddie Berto, you have enough guys in the outfield, and having a guy like Joey Wiemer in your back pocket was great to fill in, just as is exactly what happened when he got his shot with the Marlins this last season. So he would have been good in that place, but yeah, theoretically we have enough outfielders. So an outfielder goes. My first confusion about this though was, and all respect to the man, I'm a big fan of the guy. I really thought it would have been Dane Myers. Dane Myers, obviously we have seen has the capacity to be an incredible major league player, but he, had a pretty bad season, granted riddled with injuries. And there was a lot of stuff that was kind of outside of his control there. But even when he was having these long streaks without injury, he was striking out a lot. He was flying out a lot. So he just wouldn't have been the guy that I would have suspected, especially when you're considering the fact that, like, amongst your outfield, the stacked outfield you got a lot of lefties. And, you here in Joey Wiemer, you had a righty who had upside, who had demonstrated the capacity to be a pretty serviceable major leaguer. It was a little confusing to me. Now, I haven't verified this, but I will say that one of somebody on X did reply to my tweet about this, saying that it very well could just be because Wiemer doesn't have options and Dane does. And so you have flexibility with him that doesn't cause any roster shakeups in the middle of your season if you have to start making roster adjustments. That could be, a factor at play here. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm assuming probably that the Marlins front office wants to keep Joey Wiemer and they're hoping he clears waivers. But I would be really surprised if somebody doesn't see that upside and grab him.
Yeah, and going back to the options, like, it does make sense if you look at it from that perspective. The thing though is that Dane Myers, if the Marlins feel like they have to option him next season, then things really are at the lowest they can go for him, and at that point you might be looking to cut ways with him. When I look at the Marlins outfield, I think the starters are pretty much set. I think you're going to have Stowers in left, Marcy center, Conine in right, because Conine has a stronger arm than Stowers, and then Heriberto's the first one off the bench. However, you also have Sanoja who can play, Dane Myers who might slot in as that Derek Hill-esque defensive replacement, gets a few starts every couple weeks, but there's no clear path for him starting because you're not going to platoon Dane Myers with Stowers. You're not going to platoon Dane with Marcy. It just doesn't make sense. And I see a lot over the last week or so, national writers, national pundits saying, oh, the Marlins could be on the outfield market. And I said, well, they don't really need to. Like, Mike Yastrzemski, I did a segment on this last week. I said, why would the Marlins go after Yastrzemski? He's Jesus Sanchez 2.0. He can't hit lefties. His raw power is good, but essentially you're bringing back a left-handed, the same version of Jesus Sanchez. They both swing lefty. So I don't know. I think the Marlins are at a good position with their outfield. Of course, if they want to seriously upgrade somewhere, you could look at right and say, Conine's unproven. He's dealt with injuries. He's 27, 28. But I think they like what they have with him. They like that platoon scenario with Hernandez. So for Wiemer, it's almost a casualty of off the depth chart, just buried on the depth chart. And maybe, I know me and you and I both are really high on this guy, Kemp Alderman. The organization sees, hey, Alderman, his upside's even higher than Wiemer, because I think Alderman could make his debut as early as June if his AAA start to the season goes well. I think just in terms of an offensive profile, he's got power, speed. I love Kemp Alderman and the fit he has on this team. So, Wiemer, short-lived experiment. I still think there was some meat on the bone that they could have at least tried to get as much out of him as possible, work with him this offseason, and maybe he sticks with the organization. It's just one of those things where you never know.
Yeah, I just think that any front office that's paying attention, especially your front offices that prioritize grabbing dudes that aren't going to rack up your payroll too much, they see a guy like Wiemer, and it's pretty obvious that you could do something with it. But you bring up a good point. Kemp Alderman is right there, and
Right.
He's proven in AAA. He had a good AFL season. He's about ready. I mean, they're gonna. Yeah, he's not gonna. He might go to spring training, won't break camp, stick in AAA for a little bit. But like, if you need outfield backups, there he is. And I mean, how many guys can you have coming off the bench that are outfielders at the end of the day?
Exactly.
I mean, and like you could bring on another outfielder. You could get a Mike Yastrzemski. I guess Kyle Stowers is learning first base or something. I don't know, but like, we have seen weirder stuff happen at this point.
Wouldn't that be the most Marlins thing to do? They bring in Yastrzemski and say Stowers is learning first, like Jazz is learning center 2-3 years.
I mean,
ago.
listen, or like right field is basically like a glorified DH. A lot of guys say,
right?
And so maybe first base as opposed to the outfield takes Kyle Stowers from being a 32 home run a season player to a 40 home run player. I don't know.
You never know. Like this Marlins team is unpredictable. I can guarantee all the listeners out there, this Marlins team, there's no telling what they're gonna do. But one thing that is coming to an end, I think, is Jacob Berry's time with the organization. I think the time is at the end. The clock's about to strike midnight. Of course, Jacob Berry was not added to the 40-man roster, which means he's left unprotected. Now, will another team go out and grab him? We'll see. But we're going to discuss Jacob Berry and his tenure with the Marlins all the way back from being a first-round pick till now, right after this.
Boba. All
right, Jacob Berry here with Alex Forever Marlins. Jacob Berry, where do we start? Because this is the final segment of the show. I could probably do a full episode on the Jacob Berry saga, and actually that's a good idea for a future offseason episode. But Berry goes from the 6th overall pick. He was one of the best hitters in college with LSU, Arizona, and he gets drafted by the Marlins, and immediately the reaction was, you made the wrong pick. And at first glance, you say, well, he was the best hitter in college. What's not to like? Well, number one, he can't play defense at all. You drafted a DH from the get-go. I know they said, oh, we're going to try to teach him third base. Could not play third base. I mean, it's brutal to watch him play third base, even just in the lower levels of the minors. And then you have the hit tool, which in college, I want to emphasize this too. So many college bats come up from the minor or come up into professional baseball, and they don't have what it takes to hit major league pitching, professional pitching. It's a different sport. And Berry could not put it together for the first 4 years of his career. Now, in 2025, we did see some progress, but he was never added to the 40-man roster. This was his second full year in AAA, I believe. So he had ample opportunity to get a call-up, never did. It kind of felt like things came to a standstill where he was never going to make his debut with the Fish, but he was also just kind of stuck at AAA and not bad enough to send back down and completely part ways with him. But now that he's Rule 5 eligible, I just don't see how he'll ever make his debut with the Marlins, Alex.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that Jacob Berry is kind of like your prototypical quadruple A player. Or specifically for the Marlins organization, he could go off to some other organization with a more like middling infield and flourish. But yeah, he kind of seems like prime target for Rule 5 drafting from some other team, in my opinion. He has had really good moments. He obviously has demonstrated the capacity to have some slug. And there have been good stretches of Jacob Berry where he has shown himself to be an offensive asset, but there's just no consistency there. Now, maybe an organization that's better at bringing up batters than we are can do that. Possibly. But I just really don't see a world in which, I think we said this last time I was on the show. It's like, I just really have no interest in seeing Jacob Berry on a Marlins 40-man at any point in time. He is he is not a bad ball player. He's just not a consistent one. And frankly, if we wanted more inconsistent batters on our lineup, we have lots of options that at very least can get on base more than he can.
And I think it's funny too, because probably last June, no, early July, I mean, he was going through a really good stretch where he was hitting, I mean, undeniably, like he was on fire. He was probably hitting 320, 330 the last 2 months up to that point in time. And you started to see some chatter of, oh, call up Jacob Berry. And I pushed back on that idea vocally on Twitter, and people are like, why don't you want Jacob Berry? Look what he's doing. And I'm like, I just don't, honestly, like, I don't want to say it, but I just don't think he's that good. I don't think he's ever going to be a major league caliber hitter. Here's the thing, guys. When you go to a random AAA park, you go to a minor league game, there's going to be players you've never heard of that are 28, 29, 32 years old that have good AAA numbers because they can hit at that level. But they're never going to make their debut. They're career minor leaguers. Now, for Barry, is he going to be a career minor leaguer? I don't know. Again, he's Rule 5 eligible. A team very well could say, hey, first round pick, worth a flyer. Here's the issue, though. He gets picked up. He's going to be on that roster the entire season, and we're going to figure out very quickly, once and for all, whether he's a viable major leaguer at that level. It's disappointing that it didn't work out, because there were a series of drafts for the Marlins organization that continually set this organization back. And I'm hoping to snap out of that, because drafting to me is such an underrated part of building a championship contender. And whiffing on Barry, whiffing on JJ Bleday, by the way, who was just DFA'd by the Athletics. I mean, those were two of the best college hitters, and they didn't work out. And I'm hoping that it's different for this year, because the Marlins drafted another college hitter in 2025, Iva Arquette. So player development is key. It's just as key as the talent, I think, of the player. But for Barry's case, just never worked out. I wish him the best, whatever happens, whether he sticks in the organization or moves on. But just a disappointment, I think.
Yeah, I was joking with a buddy of mine that's like, one way or another, Jacob Berry is going to be with the Marlins organization at some point in time this season, because it's either going to be he does not get picked up on the Rule 5, or he does get picked up on the Rule 5 and he'll be back. God, I just thinking about like the JJ Bleday thing that you just mentioned, especially considering that he just got DFA'd by the Athletics too. We are just really that bad at first round picks, aren't we? I mean,
yeah. I
don't want to say anything about the last one, because I think I've said enough, but at least Iva's projecting high,
I think Iva, maybe it's delusion, maybe it's just optimism. I'm gonna believe in Iva until I can't believe in him. But the thing is, it's like, you go back to first round picks. The last year of Kim Ng, everyone's like, oh, Thomas White, she nailed that draft. They did nail Thomas White. That was a great pick. He was a competitive balance pick. The first round pick was Noble Meyer, and Noble Meyer is not looking good at all. So, you could have had Thomas White, and, I'm curious now. I want to see, before we wrap up this show, who was drafted after Noble Meyer. I know there were some studs.
I forgot that Noble Meyer was the first round. I in my head, it's been Thomas White this entire time.
Right? That's a good trivia question.
Listen, I'm not out on Noble Meyer. Like, he has really good outings, and his stuff is still great. It's just that, like, his command is a disaster.
I'm not out on him yet, but I think this is a make or break year.
Yeah, I think that
I think if he continues struggling with command, and he has a 5 ERA again, you're going to be like, well, what do you even do with him now?
I think if he can't finish this season and at least be doing damage in Double-A, then I don't think that he's getting very far.
Right. That's the thing. Right after Meyer, Nolan Shonowell was drafted, and then at 13 you had Matt Shaw. So Bryce Eldridge at number 16 too. So just goes to show Marlins and drafting.
Yeah, Peter Bendix is so good at so many other aspects of managing this organization, but like so far in his tenure with the Marlins, let's hope he broke it this year.
The best part not the best part, but the ironic thing was in 2024 when we drafted Morlando. Number one, I didn't like the pick because I wanted a college bat. Ironically enough, I wanted Benj, who's on the Mets from Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
But that second pick, Carter Johnson, I was super high on. I'm like, oh, this is an awesome pick. And dude, Johnson's been worse than Morlando, which is crazy to say. Like what happened there? Like, is that player development or is that just like whiffing on the wrong guys, you know?
Well, I mean, it's like I think about like the Billy Bean story all the time, where it's like you have these guys who have this like such high pedigree, they're so sought after, they're very highly regarded, and then it's just like they can never adjust to the major league mindset, and they can never adjust to professional baseball and the way that impacts a guy's mindset in such a different way than high school or college ball does. And I think that frankly, that's like, you know, I've read many people say that that's like 50% of the game is just getting your head to believe that you are a professional baseball player now, and that you have to play like one. And I just think that you get a lot of these guys who just, you know, that's the part that you go through all of your little league and high school and college. You can't really teach that.
Well, Alex, it's been great having you on the show. We're going to wrap it up here. Quickly tell the audience, you know, where they can find your work and what you've been working on recently.
Yeah, I'm kind of just getting back into the swing of things. I just kind of had a busy season with work, but yeah, I've been writing more blog posts on Fish on First. And yeah, I'm at Forever Marlins on X, and I'm there doing some combination of me attempting some kind of intelligent commentary and mindless brain fog memes.
There we go. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Marlins. Appreciate you having coming on the show. And to the audience, you know, until next time, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.